Today also we will discuss the numerical problems for the first hour. After that, we'll talk about something else. So just to remind you, the exam will be held next week, that is next Monday during the regular class hours, which is 2 to 3 p.m. So, so like yesterday we had discussed quite a few problems. So today let's continue to discuss some more problems. So let us look at this problem. So consider a special variable x, which can be written in the
Excuse
form
me, sir.
Yes.
Sir,
Yes.
I had a question.
Yeah.
One of
Please
the
ask.
questions regarding in the last class.
Uh-huh.
Sir, we did a question number 6 in the last class.
Question.
Sir, in that number 6.
Yeah, number 6.
Sir, in this question, we are not given the W, the parameter W.
No, the
That is
W
what we
that
have
you
to
have
find,
to,
right?
yeah, that is what you have to find. You have to calculate. You have to calculate the mu as well as the at
Sir,
every location.
yes.
Yeah, you have to calculate both the
But
mu
sir,
at every
if
location and W. Yeah, what are you asking?
yes, sir. Sir, if in the question instead of this, if it was given that W is given and we have to find the latitude and longitude of that position.
Okay.
So can this be done if we use the method which we use in question number 3, question part 2?
Number 3, part 2. So okay, so you are so like okay, so like so basically you are trying to say that there is some location in which latitude longitude is not present, and like you no, I didn't get it. So you are
Yes, sir.
asking that there is one location where the latitude, let's say, is S1 and the longitude is S2, and these observations are given to you, and then you are like you are saying that you like you have to calculate what are S1 and S2. Is that what you are saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. So if that is the case, like in that case, yeah, the general strategy will of course be that is we will like we have the observations at these locations, so we will that is the covariance. So let us consider this against and one more location for which the this okay, or let us consider say some other locations for which the these things are known. So in that case, what we will do is we will first of all calculate the covariance of this location in terms of S1 and S2. So like W is given to us. So the covariance will have to be calculated in terms of the distance of S1 and like that. I mean, like S1 minus 22 whole square plus S2 minus 61 whole square root of that and so on. So the basically we can write the covariance in terms of S1 and S2. And then we have the observations also. So we can, so since it follows a Gaussian process, so we can say that like all these observations together will like they will follow a jointly they will follow a Gaussian distribution whose covariance like you can write in this way. So I mean, you can estimate the covariance in terms of S1, S2. So then you can the whole joint PDF you can write down, and which will include S1 and S2 as the unknown terms, and then you can take the derivative with respect to S1, S2, etc. Basically, you have to maximize that PDF with respect to S1 and S2, and that will give you the answer.
Yes, sir. Understood. Yes, sir.
Now let us move to another question. So consider a special variable x which can be written as xs equal to ms plus ys. So ms is like the local component and ys is the global component. And so it has been said that the global component, it follows the Gaussian process with mean function 0 and a covariance function is defined in some way. Now like consider 6 locations where the lat long coordinates are given, Now in one of these locations, the local mean is not known. So as you can see in this position, the local mean, so this is like the MS. So MS is known at 5 locations, but at the sixth, at this particular one, the fourth location, it is not known. And then and in another location, the X is not observed in one day. Like as you can see in the second location on day 3, it is not observed. So given the remaining observations and of X and the means of the other locations, you have to estimate the missing values. That is both this one as well as this one. So how do we approach this problem? Any ideas? Yes. So for every location, so this is basically the value of X. At every location, I know the value of XS. Like so, keeping this thing aside, keeping this one aside, at all other locations, I know the value of X. And then the M is also known at all locations except the fourth one. So keeping the fourth one aside, uh, so YS we can calculate at at all the other places. That is, I can simply do this kind of thing. Say that is location number 1, 3, 5, and 6. These 4 locations, they do not have any missing values. Okay. So the second one, it has the observation is missing. So let us just assume its unknown value to be y. Sorry, let us just assume this value to be the observed value to be x. So the corresponding y value will be just like x minus 6, right? So like this table, we can, like the data we have here, we can simply transform into that. So this is the table of the x's. I can transform it into the table of the y's by simply subtracting the means. This can like leaving this fourth point out for which the mean is not known. So assume for now that this fourth location is not there. Just for the remaining 5 locations, just calculate the y table by simply subtracting the mean. At this location 2 on day 3, the like we do not know the value of x, let it be unknown. So the y corresponding y value is just 6. Okay. Now we know that this thing follows a Gaussian process with mean 0 and the parameter, I mean the covariance something. So since that is the case, since it follows a Gaussian process, so if we consider like any observation, say, or like if we consider all the observations on day 3, like we will get something like the first element will be 5 minus 5, 0. The second is x minus 6. The third one is minus 1. Fourth one is like just ignore it for now. The fifth one is minus 1. The sixth one is 1. Okay, so this is basically the y on day 3. So now what do we do? Like we know what is, so this is a 5-dimensional vector, and what distribution does this thing follow? It will have to follow the Gaussian distribution only, because this y it follows a Gaussian process. So if it follows a Gaussian process, that means if you consider any subset of the locations, there also it is the their observations also follow the Gaussian distribution. And so what is the Gaussian distribution here? What are the Gaussian distribution parameters here? The mean is, of course, the mu is of course 0, like which is given that is what is given, the mean function 0. So so it will be in this case, for since we are considering 5 locations, it will be 5, that the 5-dimensional 0 vector. And what is sigma going to be? So how will I calculate the sigma in this case? The formula is given, right? The formula for the covariance function is given. So whenever you have two locations S and S prime whose distance is less than 2, then their covariance is 1, and otherwise the covariance is 0. So this covariance matrix, what's the size of the covariance matrix going to be? Because we have 5 locations, so obviously this covariance matrix will also have to be 5 cross 5. So remember that we are not considering the fourth location, we are considering the remaining 5 locations. So if you consider the remaining 5 locations, so this one will be the variance, the variance of the first location. So how will I calculate the variance of the first location? Just from the formula. So like, so here it's like the distance from one point to itself, which is 0. So its variance will be 1. Next, you consider the first two locations, this location and this location. Their distance is 1, which is less than 2, so the covariance is 1. So this and this, you can just put it to be 1. Next, the first location and the third location, their distance is now becomes 2, so which is equal to 2. So, but not less than 2, so its covariance will be 0. So similarly, first location and fourth location, again, sorry, fourth location we are not considering. First location and fifth location, distance is root 2. So so in this case, the distance is this root 2 is of course less than 2. So in this case, the uh, covariance is 1 again, right? If you consider the first and the fifth location, their distance is root 5, which is so greater than 2, so it will be 0. So in a similar way, we can just populate this whole covariance matrix with ones and zeros. So finally, you will get the value of sigma. You also know mu, you know y. So however, the only missing value is x. So as discussed in the previous problems. So again, you will write down the Gaussian PDF and you will choose x in such a way that this PDF is maximized. Okay. So that is the way you will find this thing. So let us say it comes, so let's say that value comes to be -1. So in that case, y3 is -1. That means x will have to be m plus y. So the m is given as 6. So in that case, this will become x equal to 5. Okay. I'm not saying that this value will come out to be -1. So what the value will be, you will get like when you actually do the differentiation and equate it to 0. So that is left as an exercise for you. But the general idea is that once you get that value of x, then you can add the m to it. Yeah, sorry. Once you get this unknown value, you can get the thing. So yeah, so that will be the observation. So, next is now comes the matter of this local mean. So yeah, so can you now tell me what this local mean will have to be? I mean, how we will calculate this local mean? Yes, how do I calculate this local
Sir, will
mean?
the local mean also,
Yeah.
sir, will this local mean also follow the Gaussian distribution?
No, no such thing is said. It said that it said about ys, the y component is a global component, it follows the Gaussian process. But no such thing is said about the local mean m. So the local means are not, they do not follow the Gaussian process. So then what can we say about the local mean? Let us say this is m. How do I solve the for m?
Sir, shouldn't we directly find the mean from the observations?
Sorry, I did not get it.
Like from the observations, can't we find the mean directly?
Oh, okay, you are talking about the mean of these observations. Is that so? Yes, so
Yes,
that's
sir.
not a bad idea because like basically the mean of the observation is, so like if you take the mean of all these observations, then it will be this relation holds, right? Xs equal to ms plus ys. So if you take the mean, so like basically xs like this bar indicates the sample mean and ys bar is the sample mean. Now excess bar is something which you can get from the just by taking the mean of the observations. The crucial thing to note is that ys bar. What can we say about ys bar?
From the Gaussian process, we mentioned that mu is 0 for that location.
Right. So the Gaussian process mean function is 0. So that is if we take a sample mean, like if we take a large enough sample mean, then we can we can say that this is equal to this the ys bar will also be equal to 0. So if this is to be considered as 0, then ms is just the mean of the observations. Fine. So that is like that is something you can do. Like that is, if you say that, then it is not a wrong argument. Why is it not a great argument either? Because the so when do we say that the like the mean function, I mean the Gaussian mean, that is basically the expected value of the Gaussian variable. So when do I say that the expected value is equal to the sample mean?
Large numbers.
Yes, exactly. That is the law of large numbers. That is, if we have a very large number of samples, then we can say that the sample mean is equal to the expected value. So here we are having 5 observations. Now, is 5 a large number? Probably not. So I'm not saying that. So if you want to do that approximation, you can do it. I won't say it's wrong, but it is a bit questionable because the sample size is not that large. So what you can, okay, so so this is one, like you can say that this is like the this is one possible answer. What can be other possible answers? Again, using the concept of Gaussian process, can you do something else? See, this is the table of the x, and we know that x is equal to m plus y. And you also, so like we do not know, so for other locations we know the m, only for this one we do not know m. So what I can do is, so again, if I can now convert this table of x into the table of y, so basically these observations will become 3 minus m, 3 minus m, 3 minus m, 5 minus m, and 5 minus m. While the others you can actually get numerical values, like this will be 1, this will be 2, this will be minus 1, this will be 0, 0, etc., etc. Okay. So like you will be that way you can construct the table of the y values. But you already know that y follows the Gaussian process. You also know the mean and the, I mean the mean as well as the covariance of that Gaussian process, right? So now you have got like so now let us just consider any two observations, or sorry, any two locations. Let us consider these and these two locations. So these like if you consider these two I mean the observations at these two locations, the y values at these two locations, then because y follows a Gaussian process, so that means if you consider any subset of these observations, they will still form a Gaussian distribution. So just these two things, so like these vectors, like say 0, 3 minus m. Then the next one is also 0, 3 minus m. Then third one is minus 1, 3 minus m, etc., etc. So we have 5 observations like this. So all of these also follow a Gaussian distribution. Again, a two-dimensional Gaussian distribution whose mean as usual, because the mean function is 0, so the mean is going to be just the two-dimensional 0 vector. And the covariance, again, you can work out from the formula that has been given, right? So in this case, the mu is equal to 0, 0, and the covariance sigma is equal to, so at the first thing, what is it? Their variance is like, of course, is its own variance, which is 1. The second thing is just the, I guess, between these two locations, their distance is okay, their different, so their distance is √2, which is √5, which is greater than 2, so their covariance will be 0. So this is 0, this is also 0, this is just 1. So basically the sigma becomes equal to the identity matrix. Okay, so then you have got you have got these 5 observations in terms of which contains the unknown m. You know the mu, you know the sigma. So what do you now do? So obviously you can write down the PDF, I mean the joint PDF of these 5 observations, and then maximize it. That is to say, you have to choose M in such a way as to maximize that PDF. So that M you can, so once again you solve some kind of a optimization problem and get the value of M. Just like that's pretty much something similar to what you have done for X. So yeah, so this way you can like estimate the this missing value as well as this missing value. Okay. Now let us come to the next question. This is actually based on the geostatistical equation. So consider the rainfall XST, where S is a location and T is some month of the year. Now XST can be decomposed in the following way. So it's like decomposing the spatial component and the temporal component plus adding a noise. So this is the spatial component. So this is the spatial component MS, and the temporal component is NT. Okay. And A is a, so like N is specific to months and A is, yeah, A is a, like A is any constant value and E of ST is a Gaussian noise that follows this kind of a distribution. Now this XST is measured for like every month in every year. Now if A and MS1 is given using the observations of X, estimate M and N. That is, M is known at one location, the A is known, the X are known at all locations and at all months of all years. That is, now what is, and M is known at one of the locations. Now you will, what is being asked is that you have to calculate the M at all locations, plus you also have to calculate the N for all months. Okay. So now the question is how to go about it. Again, any ideas? So let us consider location S1. So at X location S1, I have observations like this. Etc. etc. Okay. Now each of these observations I know can be written as follows: A into MS1 plus 1 minus A into NT1 plus some error E of ST1. Okay. So remember that N is specific to months. Okay, N is a month specific constant. That is, So now what so suppose okay, so first of all let us see what let us first see what all terms we know. The X, the observations X, we know them. They are the data. It is said that I know A. If I know A, I know 1 minus A also. I also know MS1. MS2, MS3 I don't know, but MS1 I do know. And these things, the error, I don't know it, but I know its property, namely its mean is 0, its variance is 0.1. So now what can I do? So so my first aim is to calculate the n for every month. So let us first of all focus our attention on one particular month. Let us say month of January. Okay, so there are multiple that is these T1s. These are specific to months as is a month of a year. That means the T1 can be things like January 2000, January 2001, January 2002, January 2020, January 2021, etc., etc. So let us focus on only those observations which are specific to one particular month. Let us say T1 equal to January. So, we calculate focus on only those observations which are specific to location S1 and to the month of January. So all of them will have the same value of NT1 because T1 is specific is a constant, is a month specific constant. So all of them will have the same value of N, which is NGen. So I will for the first year number 1, I will have AMS1, which is a constant. Let me call it as C1 plus 1 minus A, which is also a constant, into NGen plus E1. For the second year, I have the first thing, which is the constant C1 plus 1 minus A into NGen plus E2 and so on. So I repeat this for all the years that are available to me. And then what I do is I take the mean of all these observations. So now so this is X bar. This is N into C1, where N is the number of years. So we have got the data that has been given to us is over several years. So N is the total number of years plus again this same thing, this 1 minus A times NJ, this also repeats for all the years. So this is also constant. Sorry, this is not call it as the sum of the observations. Nj plus sum of the E values. So now I will just divide all through by N. So what I will get is the sample mean of all the observations for that particular location and that particular month. Similarly, this C1 is a constant which I already know. C1 is equal to A times MS1. MS1 I know, A also I know, so C1 I know. And the summation of E1, so assuming N to be large enough, so I can make this as 0 because it follows the 0 distribution. Okay. So that is something you can do. If not, then on the contrary, if N is the number of years N is not large enough, then again you can basically do the same thing, that Gaussian PDF maximization thing which we talked about. I mean, basically each of these E1s, each of them follow a Gaussian distribution. So you can write E1 is equal to X1 minus C1 minus 1 minus A1 Nj. You can write it like this. E2 is equal to C1 minus 1 minus A Nj, etc. So basically, so these are constant terms. C1 is is a value whose is something whose value you know. 1 minus A, that value also you know. X1, X2, these are also things you know. The only thing you don't know is Nj. So you can just write all these observations in terms of nj, and then their PDF, like you can calculate it. I mean their joint PDF you can calculate in this way so as to maximize nj. So that way you will be able to calculate nj. Note that nj is not specific to any location, it is specific to a month. So if you have n, by nj I mean the n of the month of January. So once I have calculated that, I can also calculate like for February. That is now suppose I write equal to February. So now basically everything else will remain unchanged, except that now instead of focusing only on the months of January every year, I will focus on the months of February and every year. So this is what I will get. So that way again I will do the same thing as I had done last time, and I will get n of Feb. So similarly n of March, n of April, etc. I will get. So and finally I will get the n value constants for all the years as has been written here. Okay, so n is a month specific constant so for all 12 months I will be able to get the n. So now I know all the n's. I know A, I know MS1. Now what is left? Now left is MS2, MS3, etc. So now you go to location S2. Now you you have these observations. You do not know MS2, but the other things you know. So now, and you also know that this error, I mean, or the noise, this follows a Gaussian distribution. So then you can calculate like the way you had calculated NGen, NFEB, etc. The same way you can now calculate MS2. Similarly, you can calculate MS3 and so on. So that finally you will get the M's for all the locations, right? So so this was possible because we had, that is we could calculate it for all locations and for all months, because we had decomposed this thing into these components. One is the location specific component and the other is the month specific component. Fine. So that is about this problem. Now let us talk to come to the questions of these related to the extreme values and so on. So here we are you are given a spatiotemporal data set for 20 years. I mean there are 3 locations S1, S2, S3, and at that some variable is measured for 20 years. So first of all, the first question is calculate the climatology for each location and the anomaly value for each location. So the climatology for each location is simply the mean value or the long-term mean at every location. So the 20 years we can consider is a long enough time. So basically at each location we calculate the mean of observations. That becomes our this thing, right? It becomes our climatology. And once I know the climatology, then I can simply subtract the climatology and get the anomaly value for each observation. So like first of all, for location S1, I have all these values. So I do the this calculation, the mean calculation. Let us say that the mean comes to something like 40. So then what I will do is I will simply subtract 40 from all these readings, and what I will be left with is the anomalies. Similarly for S2, I will calculate the mean and I will subtract that mean from all the observations. So I will be left with the anomalies. Okay, so that is something which you can do. Now the next question is calculate the 90th quantile or the percentile of each location. So at every location, I know the all the observations. So how do I calculate the 90th percentile? So obviously there are 20 observations. So I will sort them in order in ascending or descending order, in any order. And then that is I will choose the top 10% of the values. So 10% of 20 is of course two locations. So like just, sorry, not two locations, two observations. So just ignore the first two observations and consider the third largest observation. So we can say that 17, we can say that 18 observations are less than or equal to that particular observation. So suppose I just like for location S1. So let us try to rank all these things. So the smallest value will be, I guess, 32. Next, we have the 38. Here is a 38. Here is another 38. So okay. Next, let us, after this comes 39. We call this as 4. After that comes, what is 5? After, okay, 40. 40, right? 40 is 5. After that, 42. It occurs twice. Then, okay, 6 and 7. Then 44. Okay, 8. And so on. Like you can, after that 45. 46. 46 occurs twice. 10 and 11. Oh, another 39 I have missed here. So anyway, so like you can just enumerate all the things there, and you can select the, like at the end you can select what are the two largest values. So the two largest values, I guess, are, one is 58. What's the second largest value? The second largest value is 52. These are the only ones above 50. After that, what is there? After that, there is 49. So now if you consider 49, so you can see that 18 out of 20 values are less than or equal to 49. So so like that is the 90th percentile. So the similar exercise you can do for S2 as well as S3. Next, the next question is being asked is calculate the return periods of the climatology value for each location. So you have calculated the climatology for each of the locations, which is this 20-year mean. So let us say that for location S1, you have, let us say that 40 is the mean, okay, long-term mean. So now how do you calculate its return period? You first have to, like basically you have to calculate what percentile it is. That is, how many of the observations are less than or equal to 40. So so let us say it turns out that some 6 observations are less than or equal to 40. So we can say that 6 by 20. That is the probability, like that is its CTF, you can say, the cumulative probability of cumulative probability of what? Of any year having less than or equal to this, the mean value. Okay, so 6 by 20, that is which is of course equal to like 0.3. So so now the question is, what is the return period? So how do I calculate the return period? The return period is basically the reciprocal of that 1 by 0.3, which is like equal to 3.33. So we can say that, I mean, assuming that 40 is the mean and this number is 60, so that will mean that it will mean that 3.33 years is the return period for the climatology. So similarly, so like of course for these are only approximate values which I said. So the actual values you can calculate, and accordingly, so basically you'll have to calculate how many values are less than or equal to, I mean how many observations are less than or equal to that value. Let that number be n. So the cumulative probability of, or rather the percentile of that is that n divided by 20, and the return period will be just the reciprocal of that 20 by n. Next, check if the positive anomalies at the 90th quantile events are temporally coherent. That is, suppose in any given year, there is a this positive anomaly, then does it increase the probability of a positive anomaly in the next year? That is what is being like you are being asked to calculate. So so the first of all, I will have to calculate this probability that like consider focus on any location. Let's focus on S1. So now I am first of all, I will calculate how often do I get a positive anomaly. So, so you have already calculated the anomaly value for each of the observations. That is, you have subtracted the climatology and you have got what is the anomaly values, right? So you have got the values of that is this is the X table. You have converted it into the Y table. So now what you are going to check? You are like what are you going to calculate? You are going to calculate this quantity, that is how many of those y's are positive. So let us say that 9 of them are positive and 11 of them are negative. So in that case 9 by 20 is this probability. Now the question is what about this quantity? So on any given year, if there is a positive anomaly, what is the probability that the next year is also going to have a have a positive anomaly? So obviously you have already seen that 9 years have a positive anomaly. So what you are being asked is that how many of these 9 years are followed by another positive anomaly year? So that again you will have to calculate. So let us say it turns out that 6 of these 9 years are followed by another positive anomaly. So it is like this probability is 2/3. So it's like saying that given like if I know that 1 year already has had a positive anomaly, then the probability that the next year is going to have a positive anomaly is 2/3. But if I do not know any such thing, then if you consider any particular year, then the probability of that having a positive anomaly is only 9 by 20. So that indicates that yes, the positive anomaly events are temporally coherent. That means when one happens, another of them also happens. Okay. So that is the definition of the, or that is what I mean by the positive anomalies being temporally coherent. The next question is, are the 90th quantile events also temporally coherent? So yeah, you know what is the, like you already know what's the 90th quantile or the 90th percentile. So you have at every location, you will have to find the these events which are like within the which are basically the like the 90th quantile. Let us say the 58th and so on. I mean the values, sorry, the values of 49 and the higher values. So basically what the question that is being asked is that on a given year, suppose like I get this kind of, I mean a 90th percentile event or an event which is higher than 90th percentile. So will it be like, are these usually followed immediately by another such year? So here you can see that only 3 times has the like the 90th percentile events happened, right? These only these 3. So we can say that 3 by 20 is their probability. Now, out of these 3, how often is one of them followed by another? So here you will see that out of the 3 such incident events that happened, one of them was immediately followed by the other one. So we can say that in 1/3 of those cases, one anomaly is followed by like one, I mean 1/90th percentile event is followed by another. So now we have to basically compare 1/3 and 3 by 20, and it will come out that 1/3 is greater than 3 by 20. So yes, so we can say that these ones are also temporally coherent. That is, like given that in a particular year, this kind of an event has happened, we can say with some certainty, like with a higher probability, that the next year will also have a similar event, which is not the case if you did not know that this year at the event. Okay, so this is a way you can define it. And finally, the last part is similarly, are such events spatially coherent? That is, for that also a definition is given. So that is to say, suppose one location is having this kind of say a positive anomaly, then what is the probability that its neighboring locations will also have a positive anomaly? So that kind of these kinds of probabilities also you can calculate. Okay. So that's what this question is about. The next question is like, so this is an incomplete data set. So now for that, so like that is to say several values are missing. So we had calculated the different missing value imputation problems. So basically you are required to like try out the different values. So so can someone suggest now like how to say, like how I may try to estimate say this value? Can I simply take an average of this and this and put it here? Will that make sense? Yes or no? Yeah. Who wants to reply? Meghasrita, can you tell me? Can I just take the average of these these three values to estimate this one?
Yes, sir, we can take the average.
We can take the average, sure. Anyone differs?
Should we take the spatial average or should we take the temporal average?
What do you think we should do? So spatial average, let us come to later. So okay, I mean, sorry, temporal average will come to later. Let us first consider that for any given on that day, like look at the other the values at the other locations, and I take the average of them. Should that be done or should that not be done? What is your opinion? In
Here
general,
S1 is very S1 is very far away from S3 and S4. I mean, that is 16
yes.
here, this is 13, 36. Like
Yes,
average
so
may
if
not.
you right, so if you remember that day's lesson, we had identified that some of the locations are close to each other and some other locations are like close to each other. So basically, we can group the locations. So now you can see that in general S1 and the observations at S1 and S2 tend to be somewhat close to each other, but the between S2 and S3 they may appear like it seems that there is the difference, average difference is much larger. Between S2 and S4, it is probably like also quite large, even larger, right? So like here to here is 10, here to here is like these two, okay, 3 and 5, here it's 13. So so it does not seem that, so it does seem that S1 and S2 are like one system and S3 and S4 are another system. Okay, so in that case, why will I take the average of over S3 and S4? So in that case, one possible, so I cannot take the average over so that I will not do. What about this thing? What about the average over all the days? Can I do that? There does not seem to be like at any location. See, if you consider S1, there does not seem to be too much variance across the different time points. At S2 also, I mean at S2 of course missing value is there, but ignoring the missing value, there it does not seem that there is too much of a difference over these things. The variance is less. So that might be, it might be easier to use the this temporal averaging in this case. So similarly here also. Now, if you consider say S4, then what happens? So in case of S4, as you can see, there is this value can be as low as 15 and as high as 36. Unlike S1 and S2, where like temporally there is not much variance, here there seems to be a very high temporal variance. Something similar can be said about S3 also. That is, it varies from 18 to 30, right? So for these two locations, taking the temporal average is probably not the great idea. So we have to take the spatial average only. But again, spatial average, as we have already seen, that S3, S4 is a different system than S1, S2. So again, when if I have to estimate the value of S3, I cannot depend on S1 and S2. So I have to depend only on S4. So I can just put it to be 26. In this case, I can just put it to be 28. So something like that, something like this you can do. The other thing which you can do is, of course, like do the matrix factorization kind of technique, assuming that the data matrix is approximately low rank. That is, you try to approximate it by, so this, what is the size of this matrix? So it is 4 cross 6, right? 4 cross 6 matrix. So its minimum rank is 4. So the question is, can we approximate it with a matrix which has a lower rank, let us say 3, 2, or 1, and so on. If we can, then or in other words, this X, can I factorize it in the following way? A into B, where A is, let us say, 4 into 2 and B is, let's say, 2 into 6, or 4 into 1 and 1 into 6. Can we do these kinds of approximations? And if we can do these approximations, then basically you will have to find those matrices A and B, like based on the on those observations that are available to you, that is ignoring the missing observations. And once you have calculated A and B, you can just multiply them to get the full matrix. I mean the estimate of the full matrix X, and whichever are missing, you can just plug in the values. Fine. Next, this is so this one also deals with missing values. Now suppose the measurements at each location follows a Gaussian distribution whose parameters are known. Also, it is known that on any day, the difference between the measurements at two locations follows a Gaussian distribution with mean 0 and variance proportional to the distance between the locations. So using this information, predict the missing values using Bayesian analysis. So let us say, like, let us focus on this particular value. Let us call it this missing value. Let's call it as X. So suppose the measurements at each location follows a Gaussian distribution whose parameters are known. So this is one location, its Gaussian parameters are also given 12, 2. So probably, so you can actually write the PDF of this X. So 1 by root 2 pi to sigma is 2 e to the power minus 1 by 2 sigma square. Sigma square is 4. So 1 by 8 x minus 12 whole square. Okay, this is the like as far as this location is concerned, this is the PDF. Also, it is known that on any day, the difference between the measurements of two locations follows a Gaussian distribution with mean 0 and variance proportional to the distance between the two locations. So if you consider these two locations, the difference between their measurements, that is x minus 17, this again follows a Gaussian distribution with mean 0 and variance proportional to the distance. So what is their distance? Their distance in this case is root 5, right? So the variance will be the sigma, that is, let us say, equal to a into root 5. So we can write, so like the PDF, like we can write as 1 by root 2 pi. The sigma is, as I have written here, a into root 5. And this is e to the power minus half 2 sigma square. Sigma square is 5a square. So 10a square x minus 17 square. Okay. And so like this a is a constant that is known to you. Then similarly between these two locations, the distance, I mean the difference is x minus 15, and that also has, like, it follows a similar kind of distribution. So again, between these two locations, the difference is x minus 19, and their distance is something else. So accordingly, it follows another PDF. So basically, there are 3 or 4 PDFs. One PDF with respect to the location itself, another PDF with respect to the difference with this location, another one with respect to the difference with this location, and the third one with respect to the difference with the fourth, this location. So all these 4 PDFs which you have found, you will like the, I mean the actual distribution, I mean the total, the overall distribution of x given all the other observations will have to be the product of all all these 4 PDFs. And then of course you will have to choose x in such a way as to maximize the whole thing, right? So that like you already know how to do that. It will be a bit of a complicated calculations, but you can do it. So similar kind of thing you can do for this location, and so on. So next we come to these GV style distributions. So here a data set has been given to you. So here you are being told a set of annual observations are available at some locations. So like these are locations, and here are the different years, 4 locations and 8 years. The annual observations of some variable is provided to you. And suppose each of them follow a gamma distribution whose shape and scale parameters are also given. Now define anomaly events as those which have a return period of 10 years or more with respect to those distributions. Now identify the anomaly events. Also identify such Bach anomaly years in which the same year has in the same year the values at 2 or more locations have a return period of at least 5 years. So you have got the like at every location you already know the gamma distribution. So the gamma distribution, let us say S1, you know that the gamma distribution is something like, it has this kind of a PDF. So now what is being asked of you, it is being asked those events which have a return period of 10 years. That is to say, the probability of that being exceeded will have to be 1 by 10. That is like if instead of considering the Gaussian PDF, if you are considering something like a Gaussian CDF, so like basically it will mean that the probability of all or the cumulative probability of all values below this value is 90%, and above it is 10%. So now how we will calculate that period. I mean, sorry, I mean that point. So that I leave it for you as an exercise to check. That is, if you are given a distribution with all the parameters, then how do you calculate its, say, its 90th percent? So the return period of 10 years basically means its probability will have to be 1 by 10. That means the so it is something like the 10th percentile. So how do I, sorry, the 90th percentile. So how do I calculate the 90th I mean the different percentiles given a particular distribution? So that is like, I leave it as an exercise to you to calculate. Now, once you have calculated it, so that is like, let us say for this location, let us say that comes to be something like 60. Similarly, for this location, let us say the like whatever the value is, that 10 return period of 10 years, let us say that comes out to be 75 and so on. So then those years in which this threshold has been exceeded, those years are the anomaly years. So this is an anomaly year, this is anomaly, and the last one is also an anomaly. So here, this one, this one, this one, this one, these are the anomaly, etc., etc. So, so this way, like you can like calculate the threshold for the 10%. I mean the 90th percentile event, and accordingly you can do the things. So that's with this question. So we will stop after the following questions. For the remaining questions, so I have like already put up this file, the hints and solutions. So you can just go over it. Okay. If you consider the, sorry, I just lost it. Yeah. So here this is related to the GeV distribution. So with the GeV distribution, we know that like they follow a GeV distribution with scale parameter sigma and the shape parameter epsilon. So so if you remember the GeV distribution, the notes of which are available, they have three things: the location, the shape, and the scale, right? These are the three parameters of a GeV. And now what is being the scale, and so like it is being told to you that for all the locations, all the 4 locations that have been given to you, the GeV, the extreme values, I mean the bulk maxima or the block maxima, they follow the GeV distribution. So with the parameters, among the parameters, the epsilon and the psi are, sorry, the psi and the sigma are fixed on all the places. The only thing that is not fixed is the mu. Now you are being asked to estimate, like you are told that this mu, it follow like at the different locations, it follows the Gaussian process with mean function 5 and the covariance function defined in this particular way. Now, if mu S1 is known, calculate the mu of S2, S3, and S4. So again, it's the matter of that Gaussian process only. So once again, basically what you have to do is the kind of thing which we are doing for Gaussian process all the time. So let us consider the second location. Let us say here the value of the mu is mu2. And then what are we going to do? So you can actually calculate the yeah, you can calculate the sorry, there are two things. One is the mu. So let us say that the mu in this case is given. Let us call it as some value a. So on one hand, you know that this a and mu2, this undergoes the Gaussian distribution with mean parameter 5, 5. And the covariance can also, the 2x2 covariance matrix can also be calculated. So the Gaussian PDF you can write in terms of this mu2. Again, suppose like whatever is the value of mu2, you have all these observations of the block maxima. Now they follow the GeV distribution. The first parameter is mu2, which you are trying to find. The values of the others are given to you 0 and 25. So using these you can like fit. So you can fit these values to the GeV PDF. So for that is you have one Gaussian PDF because of the this Gaussian process prior on mu2. Additionally, for each of the observations, you have the GeV PDF. So you multiply all those PDFs together. Each of them is in terms of mu2. So and then you just like maximize that product of the PDFs in terms of mu2, and so that you can do. So similarly, the same exercise you can do for mu3 and mu4 also. So basically, that's it for the like how we can solve it for the this thing for the Gaussian process. There are some more questions. These are mostly related to the networks and the Kalman filters. So I'll just briefly tell you for this one, for question number 16. Let us consider a set of 7 locations where a variable is being measured at every day. Now you are being asked to calculate the correlation networks between these locations using a suitable cutoff. Okay. The climatological value and variance of the variable at each location are also provided. So these are the climatological values, and these are the variances. So now what is being asked here is to construct a correlation network. So how will you, so this is the data that has been given. So tell me how we will construct a correlation network. How do you what is the definition of a correlation network? Yes, what's the definition of a correlation network? What are the different nodes of a correlation network? That first tell me that. Ishan Bhattacharya, tell me. In case of a correlation network, what are the nodes and what are the edges? Ishan Bhattacharya, are you there? Not there. Okay. Mohini, tell me, what's a correlation network? What are its nodes and what are its edges? No response? Anyone else? Anyone else wants to tell what is the correlation, what are the nodes and edges of a correlation network? Okay, fine. So in case of a correlation network, the like the different nodes are the different locations. So there are 7 locations are given to you. So each of those locations will denote like will is associated with one node. So what I will do is between every pair of locations, I will we will calculate the Pearson correlation coefficient So for that, the like observations are already given. So you based on these observations, you can calculate the correlation coefficient. Now, say let us say this is for location S1 and this is for location S2. You can calculate the correlation coefficient. So suppose the correlation coefficient comes to 0.3. Then similarly between S1 and say S3, you calculate the coefficient which comes to 0.2. Between S1 and S5, it comes to 0.6 and so on. So based on this, you can choose a suitable cutoff, let us say 0.5. So in that case, these two nodes you will not connect, but these two nodes you will connect. Similarly, maybe like if you take these two locations, maybe their correlation is high enough. So this is, let's say, S4 and S6. So let's say the correlation coefficient between them is quite high. So you just connect them and so on. So yeah, so that's the correlation network between the locations. Next, the climatological value and variance of the variable at each location are also provided. So you know that. So now you have to identify the extreme events at each location and construct a event synchronization network with a lag of 1 day. So basically, what is the definition of extreme event at each location? So yeah, like some of various definitions were discussed in class. One definition was mu plus 2 sigma or mu minus 2 sigma. Any value or any observation which is more than mu plus 2 sigma or less than mu minus 2 sigma can be considered as an extreme event. So for every location, you can calculate, identify which are the extreme events. So let us say for this location, 14 is the for S1, 12 is the mean and 3 is the variance. So those values which are more than 18 or which are less than 6, these are the extremes. So which values are more than 18? Well, no value. And who are less than 6, that also no value. So basically at S1 there is no extreme event. If you consider S2, so here the things that are more than 18 and less than 10, those are to be considered as the extremes. So which are more than 18? This one, this one, this one. These three are more than 18. Less than 10, none. S3, it has to be between 29 and 13, right? So which are less than 13? These, yeah, and then which are more than 29? And no one. So similarly, you can just go on marking the the positive and the extreme negative extreme events in at all the locations. Then every pair of the locations, you can see whether there is any synchronization between the extreme events. So for example, here for between S2 and S3, like S2 has these three extreme events in days T4, T5, T6. S3 has in T9 and T10. But of course, these the lag between these two are quite large. That is more than 1 day. So basically, we can say that the extremes at locations S2 and S3 are not synchronized. And similarly, at the others, you can also do it. Okay. So yeah. So that's this problem, and similarly, there are a couple of more problems related to Kalman filters. So I guess you can try these. If necessary, you can refer to these hints and solutions. Okay, so with that, I think I will make an early end to today's class. And from next week onwards, we can, so next Monday is the test. And I think there is no point in starting something new before that. So the next topic we will start after the test that is on next
Excuse me, sir.
Tuesday. Yeah.
Sir, this is Sarthak here.
Yeah.
Sir, we actually have a team member of 6 for the project. So actually, one of us will be always left out. Like if we so can we form a team member
Okay,
of 6?
fine, you can. Okay, you can.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we will next meet on next Monday 2 to 3 for the exam. The question papers will be like you will be provided a link to the question paper, and you'll have to answer it, scan the answer sheet, and upload it at a link that will also be provided to you. So like you can expect about 3 numerical questions like aligned to the examples that have been discussed.